The previous basket is under review.
Welcome into a new episode of Weekend Under Review, part of the Basket Under Review network of shows and podcasts. I am Brian Rauf, joined as always by Matthew Winick here, breaking down the week of college basketball exhibitions. It is a nice time of year where we're learning a lot about teams, learning the first bit about teams we have been talking about in the Discord all offseason. Make sure you subscribe to Trilly Donovan's Discord. It is the best collection of college basketball sickos that you will find anywhere. Best discourse, I think, of college basketball you will find anywhere. First game we need to talk about, Matthew. We talk about getting our first look at these teams. Is Auburn lost to Oklahoma State in their exhibition game in Birmingham on Wednesday night. The Cowboys won that 97-95 in overtime. In our first episode, we brought up Auburn as a team we were really looking forward to seeing how they looked during exhibition season because Bruce Pearl just retired. Stephen Pearl's taken over. You have Tahad Pettiford as your only guy back. You had 4 guys who played Division I basketball last year on this roster. It's going to take some time. This exhibition season. It is not pretty. I think, at least from this game, Oklahoma State might be better than we think they are or going into the season. But to me, this was not necessarily a super surprise given all the turnover that Auburn has undergone. But is there anything that you were concerned about with the Tigers watching this game and then obviously the result?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, just want to shout out myself for calling the shot of Oklahoma State winning that game on our last podcast. When we made our predictions, I said Oklahoma State is an exhibition-style team and they'll upset Auburn. They got the job done, and they were missing 3 players, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. For Auburn, I mean, the clear concern is their depth. None of the freshmen looked really any level of ready to be playing big minutes. The JUCO guys, I mean, the big man, Akporam, I think played 1 minute. Bashir was 27-point per game scorer in JUCO and I think took 3 shots. This is going to be a starting lineup heavy Auburn team this year, at least from the early lookings. For Tahad Pettiford was sort of pressing a little bit. It sort of seemed like he was in his head, like, I've got to be the lead guy this year. It wouldn't surprise me if the lead guy this year ends up being Keyshawn Hall, who was unstoppable when he had the ball on the block with his left hand, which he's been doing for years in college basketball. It would not surprise me if he's their leading scorer this year and Tahad Pettiford is the second best player on this team. But look, this is a team that they have a lot of athleticism. Stephen Pearl did a lot of switching, especially late in that game, which was not something his father Bruce did, even though Stephen was that defensive coordinator. There are ways where this team can be solid, and they should still be a tournament squad, but they really have to find a couple of pieces, new Division I players outside of Elijah Freeman, the D2 transfer, who was awesome. Someone else has to step up, and nobody did in that exhibition game.
There were a couple of things with Auburn that made it clear this was a team of guys playing together in live action for the first time. There were 10 turnovers, which is not an absurd number, particularly for an exhibition game. But the way those turnovers happened were just miscommunications, right? Or guys being a second late, which was the other big thing from this game, I think, for Auburn, is it looked like there were guys who were playing their first game against D1 competition. Like the speed of the game seemed a little bit fast. Not that people were overwhelmed by any stretch, but decisions that you could make or passes you could throw needed to be a second sooner. And the decision-making just wasn't quite there. The speed of the game wasn't quite there for a number of those turnovers. Tahad Pettiford was 4 of 16 from the field. Poor shooting happens a lot in these exhibition games because it's your first time, like, again, live bullets. You got to get the legs underneath you. Practice shooting, even scrimmage shooting versus in-game shooting are very different things. You'll see shooting percentages in exhibition games are way lower than regular season games, largely for that reason. It's why exhibition games exist. One of the many reasons why they exist. I expect him to be fine, but the depth is a question, right? The 4 guys we talked about having played D1 ball last year, 3 of them did well. Elijah Freeman did well. The rest of that roster looked a little bit like they were treading water. And that, I think, is not to be unexpected, but is something we had questions about and remains a major question. They did nothing to ease concerns.
Yeah. And I mean, looking at Oklahoma State, and this is what I mentioned on our podcast, earlier in the week when we were previewing this game, is that they have so much returning D1 production, even though it wasn't at Oklahoma State last year. And you saw that sort of shine out even without Kanye Clary, even without Victorious Miller, even without Christian Coleman. Like Jalen Curry, Isaiah Coleman, and Anthony Roy all had giant usage roles on Division I teams last year, and they felt comfortable. They looked comfortable. And then even Parsifala, their big man who fouled out, looked comfortable. Like this was the difference between Auburn and Oklahoma State in this game. Now, if we're shifting over to the Cowboys, I am a little bit concerned because they only had 14 assists, and they are going to be a heavy isolation team. Their percentage, I believe, was 41% of their baskets were assisted, which would have been lowest in the country if it was, extrapolated over the course of a whole season. You talk about the 10 turnovers for Auburn. Steve Lutz has been known as a coach that will pressure the ball hard. And for, an Oklahoma State team that was playing a brand new Auburn team, to only force 10 turnovers is going to be a big problem when Anthony Roy isn't absolutely scorching from three late in that game. They just have a lot of bucket getters, which will look good in an exhibition situation. But I'm not bumping them up my power ranking or anything after this matchup between Auburn's struggles in the bench and then just their general style of play being maybe less conducive to, a more aggressive Big 12 scheme.
I'm bumping them up a little bit from the standpoint of they did this to an Auburn team that we still think is pretty good. And all the things we've talked about with Auburn, the concerns are real. Oklahoma State still wasn't supposed to do this, especially without 2 or 3 starters. Again, depending on how you think the line's going to go, 3 high impact guys at the very least. And they still managed to beat Auburn in Birmingham. It was a very pro Auburn crowd. You mentioned Coleman, Curry, and Roy for Oklahoma State. Those guys combined for 79 points in this game. Like, if you want to talk about depth concerns, I think Oklahoma State has them. But you had 3 guys who were 3 of the 4 best players on the court in this game. And that is not something we would have thought we were going to say about Oklahoma State going into this game, or really going into any game this season outside of some of those cupcake games they'd play in the non-conference. They have bucket getters. And Steve Lutz is a really, really good coach. He has won playing a number of different ways, a number of different styles, both at Western Kentucky and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Before that, this is a team that I'm not saying this, they're a tournament team now or anything like that, because the Big 12 is the Big 12, second best league in the country, maybe third best league, but we can parse that out another day. A lot of really good teams in that league, and I still don't put Oklahoma State in the top half of that league, but they're not a pushover. I think at the very least we learned that they're not a pushover, and they're a team that can get you with some of these bucket getters that can get hot.
Yeah, perhaps I'm not bumping them because I already had them pretty high. I had them 11th. I had them over TCU and some other teams that perhaps people would have higher, but I wouldn't read too much into it.
Not yet. We'll see. I think it is like, we'll see what happens next time. Let's see how they start the season. But yeah, the other major exhibition game that happened this week, notable one, was UConn Huskies hosting Boston College. That was a game that, again, UConn was expected to win. They did so, 71-52. I was excited about this game because I wanted to see just UConn play. And I think there were a couple of things from this game that you can take away and look at for the regular season for UConn. The main thing for me was Solo Ball was awesome. And I've been personally pretty high on Solo Ball going into this year as taking another step forward. He had a huge breakout from his freshman season to his sophomore season. Now going into his junior season, I think there's another step that can be taken. In order for him to take that, it involves being more aggressive, attacking downhill, using some more of the self-creation and playmaking other than being a standstill or off the catch shooter. Be more than just a catch and shoot kind of guy. In this game, he showed that. He made plays for others. He touched the paint more than a handful of times, had some really creative and crafty finishes at the rim that we did not see consistently last year. We would see it in flashes, but we did not see it consistently at any point last season. It is Boston College. Boston College is at the bottom of the ACC, and the bottom half of the ACC is not very good. So if you couldn't do it against Boston College, that's a problem. But having that aggressive mindset and being able to show this in a situation where you should be able to show it, to me, I think helps me feel a bit more confident about Solo Ball's chances to be the guy on a UConn team that has Final Four national championship aspirations.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative, right? Because Solo Ball did basically nothing out of self-creation last year, so it depends, like, your expectations. I still don't think that, and even from what I saw in that game, I still don't think he's a secondary creator, so to speak. Like, I still think Silas Demery and Alex Caravan are two guys that are going to be initiating more offense than Solo Ball. It was nice to see him, with the one dribble, two dribble pull up, at least get into the paint off of the bounce, even if he wasn't, creating that look himself. He was coming off his screens, and it wasn't just, fire away and shoot it. So there's definitely some more upside to, his scoring repertoire. I still wouldn't, allocate a ton of on ball, I'm not running pick and roll offense with him with the ball in his hands all that much this season. But, any way that you can score and be more multidimensional is you're going to make yourself more of a factor. And obviously, and we've talked about this, Solo Ball being more of a factor is a great thing for you.
Yeah. You're not having him bring the ball up the court and initiate the offense and expect him to go give Terrace Reed an assist. Right. Having the ability, though, to come off a screen, catch it, and do more than just shoot or pass it back to the top of the key. Like, he averaged, 13, 14 a game last year doing that, essentially. He starts attacking more and being a little more aggressive. That number shoots to 18 pretty easily, along with maybe another assist or two per game. That's the kind of UConn player that they had during those two national championship runs. And I think they need to. One other note just with the UConn in this game, they were losing in the second half, which was interesting. They were up double digits very early in this game. And as soon as they got down, they put it back to double digits very, very quickly. Again, this is Boston College. I'm not giving them a ton of kudos for being Boston College in an exhibition game. But if you're looking for things to think about moving forward, this UConn team might have the ability to flip that switch that those title teams had, where it was pretty clear they put the foot off the gas and then put it back on again. It's very hard to do that. There was a little bit of that to this team. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that up. At least that's something I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, you'd argue that was the number one feature of those Dan Hurley title teams was the spurt ability. And to have that spurt ability they did not have last year would be giant. And then we're talking about their down two starters in Silas Demery and Terrace Reed. Those are arguably two of their very best, quote unquote, spurt ability guys that can, dominate for 5-minute stretches. So they'll be a very good basketball team this year. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, we might be looking at a third title in 4 years for UConn. Other teams obviously have something to say about that, but I don't think it'd be a surprise. I don't think it would be a surprise. Well, let's get the games this weekend, because this weekend is the first weekend where there is a lot of exhibition games. We're pretty heavy on these, and there's a lot of high-profile ones too. First one we're going to touch on is Cincinnati playing at Michigan at 6:00 p.m. Eastern on Friday. First chance to see Yaxel Landenborg in a Michigan uniform. First chance to see Elliot Cadeau in a Michigan uniform. I'm excited to see what this looks like from Michigan perspective. Obviously, Cincinnati's got their own question marks, particularly as Wes Miller enters a pretty important season for his tenure with the Bearcats. What are some things you're looking for in this game that may tell you something about either one of these teams?
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't really care what Cincinnati does in this game. I mean, they're the type of team that we know kind of that they're not going to be superstar heavy. They have a bunch of players that could fit into the rotation. They're adding a lot of new pieces, but I'm really just mostly interested about Michigan and what they do with their lineups. It seems like for the past month, we've been talking about, they're going to play Landenborg, Morez Johnson, and Adai Mara together. And there's a world in which that works. It definitely works defensively. I don't think Yaxel Landenborg is a point guard. I also don't think you can really do that trio with Elliot Cadeau, who's been known for not being able to shoot the three. What does their spacing look like? What does their defense look like? How fast are they going to play? Is Landenborg just Danny Wolf? There's so many questions about this Michigan team because the upside there is so real. They have so many very talented basketball players, and then just the fit is super unique to the point where you kind of have to blind trust Dusty May to put those pieces together and kind of think about the wonky, unorthodox lineups he might throw out. And just, when you're tinkering in the exhibition slate, what is he going to come up with? What type of lineups are going to be successful, and what can you project forward with this group?
Yeah, the how you use Elliot Cadeau question. This is going to be our first chance to the answer at that. And also how you use Yaxel is going to be a major thing, our first chance to see from this game. I think it's very easy to pencil Yaxel into the Danny Wolf role. I think he's going to thrive in that. I think he has the skill set to be better than Danny Wolf was in the Danny Wolf role. I legitimately believe that. I wrote about why at basketballreview.com. But whether they choose to do that or utilize more of his skill set, use more of the playmaking, use more of the perimeter shooting, because he's got a little bit more athleticism to his game. Not that he's an uber athlete, but he's got a little more athleticism than Wolf does, and he's got a little bit more wiggle. Wolf was a great straight line driver with the ball and a great playmaker. Landenborg's got a lot of that too, but I think he's got a little bit more dynamicism to him doing that. Does that mean they use him more as a point guard? Or is it because there's Elliot Cadeau? Is it just Elliot Cadeau and everybody else figures it out around him? There's a lot of really good ball handlers and secondary playmakers on this team, guys who are good passers. You always want good passers. But when this is the Elliot Cadeau problem, or the question. When you have a guy whose major strength is his playmaking ability. He's bragged about how big men love to play with him because he gets them the ball, right? But the shooting questions come along with that, and if he can be effective without the ball in his hands, well, there are other guys who are incredibly effective with the ball in their hands. How Dusty May looks at distributing that is going to be interesting, and that's what I think the exhibition season is for, and how they try and figure that out. But yeah, I'm with you. Cincinnati, I don't know if they can show me anything in this game. Even if they win, I'm going to guess it's because Dusty May's tinkering.
I'll say this. If either team hits 10 threes, they probably win this exhibition game, because that's a question mark for both squads. If either of them can get hot from deep, they have a chance at winning this one. If either of them can sustain being a good three-point shooting team, they have the chance to be really good.
Yeah, that's likely the case as well in Iowa State Creighton. The Blue Jays are hosting the Cyclones at 8:30 on Friday as well. Two really good teams, two teams that are ranked in the preseason top 25, two of them that are coming off of seasons in which they had high expectations and were okay. Iowa State faltered on the stretch. But another season where we expect them to be good. I think there is some hope among both fan bases that they can be really good, but both sides have questions. What are you hoping to have answered, or at least get some insight into from this game?
Yeah, well, we know we have no Taman Lipsey from Iowa State. He's out with that injury, so he shouldn't be playing, which means that the backcourt for Iowa State will be completely brand new. I mean, you bring Nate Heisey back, but he's more of an off-ball three. So everyone that's going to be playing that guard spot for Iowa State is going to be either a freshman, a Euro guy, or somebody that came over from a mid-major program last year in terms of Dominic Nelson at Utah Valley. So we know what we're getting from Momcilovic and Josh Jefferson. So what does that guard rotation look like, especially if Taman Lipsey is going to miss real time? Mm-hmm. How are they going to fare in these non-conference games out of the exhibition slate if their guard room is entirely new? And then Creighton, I mean, they bring in two Iowa guys on a Fran McCaffrey-led team that played no defense. Can they defend? I mean, Owen Freeman is also not going to be in this. So injuries galore will play a role. So now you just look at, what can guys that are on the floor able to do? What are they able to do? And also, is Fedor Zugic from Creighton, who played half a year last year after his eligibility concerns, can he play some on ball, with a lot of questions about who that next point guard is with Stephen Ashworth graduating out of the Blue Jays system?
I think the best version of Creighton this season involves Blake Harper being awesome. He may not necessarily be their best player, because there are a lot of good players on this team, but I think it involves Blake Harper being awesome. The jump from Howard to the Big East is a steep one. He's probably not going to face many defenses as good as Iowa State's, because there's not that many defenses as good as Iowa State's. But if you're looking for a good litmus test to figure out where exactly he's at in that process of can he be really, really good, here's your test. And again, not a final test. This is more of like a practice quiz, an SAT prep, if you will. But this is our first chance to see if he can be that guy for Creighton. And for Iowa State, not having Lipsey, you're going to always take these with a grain of salt. But if there's one thing I'm looking at from Iowa State in this game, you mentioned Nate Heisey. Of the returning trios in the country, Previmia.com, he has a three-man lineup, so you can see how good the three-man lineups are on the court, off the court, offense, defense. That trio, Nate Heisey, Joshua Jefferson, Milan Momcilovic, is the second most efficient returning trio in the country, behind Houston's trio of Milo Zuzan, Manuel Sharp, JoJo Tugler. A lot of that's offense, because you have Momcilovic and Heisey shooting, But the only way you're going to maximize that group and actually have them on the court the way those numbers suggest is if Haisi Momcilovic can hold their own defensively, which Lipsy can cover up a lot, but you have this test now without Lipsy, which again, you may have during the regular season as well. Can they at least hold their own defensively? Because the numbers suggest offensively, they're going to make up for being an average to slightly below average defense, particularly for Iowa State standards. Can they at least be that? Or is it something where just defensively they can't be on the court for extended stretches and then you kind of lose that? Because that to me is something that could be a feather in Iowa State's cap as something they could go to. But the defense part of that is a major question, especially when your team's identity is built around the defensive end of the court.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear that 3-man lineup information, obviously Momcilovic and Josh Jefferson are awesome basketball players, but when I think about that trio being so successful as a 3-man lineup, I just think that, probably every single minute that they were on the floor, they played with 2 out of 3 of Curtis Jones, Keyshawn Gilbert, and Tamin Lipsey. And now they're playing with none of them. So that kind of changes everything to me. And I don't think that, you can just kind of scale them up as on-ball roles. Like, it's one thing to have players that are really good in their role, which those 3 guys are, but it's another thing to have them play their role when you don't have, the stars to help to make them complementary pieces for. And does Iowa State have that guard this year? Maybe it's Tamin Lipsey, but it won't be in this game. So right. We're going to learn a lot about Jamarian Bateman, Killian Toure, and the other guys in that backcourt because someone has to step up.
I think the best version of Iowa State involves that trio playing next to Lipsey with whatever big man they want to throw on the court. If Jefferson's going to play the 4, or if you want to go small, you throw another guard out there. But I think it involves that trio just because of the shooting that Haisi Momcilovic can provide, and even Jefferson too, to a certain extent. Lipsey's going to be the point guard that runs the show and has the ball in his hands, and you get the offensive spacing. That's why I'm bringing up the defensive end, because that is the question with Haisi Momcilovic in particular, is can they hold their own on the perimeter together? We'll see about that. If not, then Iowa State's going to make some adjustments. But I think that's a clear path that we may get some answers to if they can actually sustain it on the court or not. Late night Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern time start. UCLA at San Diego State. I would love to see this in the regular season because both of these teams should be a lot of fun. First chance to see Donovan Dent for UCLA, preseason number 12 in the AP poll. San Diego State, preseason favorite to win the Mountain West. A lot of analysts are very high on them and their chances going into this season. What are you looking for from this, other than hopefully a well-played basketball game?
Yeah, I mean, you were just talking about questionable defense. Like, these are 2 teams that are in Ken Palm's top 10 defensive squads this year. These are 2 teams that should be one of the best defensive units in the country. And then it's like the first question is, well, how does Donovan Dent, take the reins of UCLA, who's been, deprived of a point guard ever since Tiger Campbell left Westwood? So maybe, but the problem is here, Donovan Dent, we've already seen him play San Diego State's defense again and again and again between all the battles that he had at New Mexico against Brian Dutcher's group. So out of all of the point guards that are going to new situations where I'd be like, ooh, San Diego State's defense, this is going to be a big test. I've seen Donovan Dent do this. He's seen, Miles Bird on him with all that length. He's seen, weak side Magoon Gwath, one of the best shot blockers in the country. So I suppose this is just going to be a way to see how he fits with his teammates. Are they going to play faster, which is what Donovan Dent did at New Mexico? Is Mick Cronin going to take the training wheels off of his offense now that he has a real point guard? These are some good questions. You look at San Diego State side, do they have that leading scorer, that Lamont Butler type, that Darion Trammell type to fit the defensive pieces of Magoon Gwath and Miles?
Yeah, UCLA, I am not going to, I think, look at one way or the other in this game, unless Donovan Dent is like a disaster, which isn't going to happen. Right. To your point, that's what I'm looking at from this game. San Diego State's offense. That is what either limits or raises their ceiling in any given year. Because they're going to be really good defensively. This team has a chance to be elite defensively, especially because of Bird and Gwath, as you mentioned. Yeah. But the thing that separates the San Diego State teams that go out in the first weekend versus the one that made the national championship game were those offensive creators, right? Brian Dutcher's not like scheming up wide open shots all the time. There's a little bit of playground, and you have to create your own in a confined area. That team had a lot of guys who could do that. This team, I don't know if they do. UCLA is going to give them a test to find out if there is a little bit of that. I don't think San Diego State has to have a ton of it, but you have to have the threat of it, or somebody have the ability to do so. If somebody can do that against UCLA, I may reevaluate San Diego State. But I also don't think that, personally, I don't know San Diego State has that guy. And if they don't, I'm a little concerned about what the ceiling for the Aztecs is.
Yeah, a lot of people will say that'll be Reese Waters, who sat out last year due to injury and was pretty successful after coming over from USC. Could be Sean Newman, the Louisiana Tech transfer, is one of the best passers in the country. Or then perhaps a little bit of a wild card be Latrell Davis, a San Jose State transfer. So within the conference of the Mountain West, who kind of came on last year for San Jose State. But for UCLA, another question I have is, what is Xavier Booker's role? Is he going to play a ton? Are they going to slide Tyler Bilodeau over to the 5 a bunch? These lineups are really interesting, sort of in that Michigan realm where they might go big. I want to see UCLA go small because I think that's the best version of this team. We'll see how hell-bent Mick Cronin is on playing a true 5 in this system, if Xavier Booker even is a true 5.
That was the question for him at Michigan State. The hope is a change of scenery will be good for him. I don't think it can be worse for him, but we'll see what production UCLA gets or does not get from Xavier Booker. First game on Saturday, BYU at Nebraska. Game going to be televised on Big Ten Network Plus, so easily accessible if you have one of 8,000 subscription services that you need to watch all the basketball games. To me, this is about BYU. AJ DeBance's first game with BYU, that entirely revamped BYU roster with all the money they poured into it this offseason, first chance to see what they look like. I don't know how much you're going to learn from a game against Nebraska, who solid team, but I want to see how good BYU is.
Yeah, I mean, look, Nebraska's going to double the post over and over and over again. So they're going to force a lot of, ball reversals and passes. So for a BYU team that's kind of starting from scratch, with a lot of guys that are more on-ball guys than necessarily off-ball players, we're going to learn a lot about this offensive scheme and sort of how connected they are as we head into the season, because they're going to have to beat Nebraska via the pass and then the shoot. And they're not going to be able to beat them off of the bounce because of the way that Fred Hoiberg defensive scheme is. So we're going to learn a lot about the connectivity of this team that, they really went NBA style offensively with their transfer portal gets. They got their 3 main on-ball guys, Rob Wright, AJ DeBonsa, and Richie Saunders, and then everyone else is meant to be a complementary secondary piece. So we're going to learn a lot about how that system will hold up.
I would also caution, too, with BYU. Kevin Young used the NBA strategy last year of trying to figure out what he had the first half of the season before kind of leaning into what clicked the second half, which spurred BYU's incredible close to the season. This is an exhibition game. I fully expect him to tinker a ton. Now, there may be a little bit less because you got to get guys used to playing together and things like that, but I see a very real scenario where Nebraska wins this game, but I feel good about BYU coming out of it. Kevin Young, I think, is going to use this to find what he has.
If Ring Mass is healthy off of that knee injury and he's able to suit up in this one, he's good enough on his own with the way that he's able to be a hub big man where they can beat a team that isn't prepared offensively or that is tinkering a bunch offensively. They could absolutely come in and take this one. So you're right. I wouldn't overreact either way, but it will definitely be good to see how they can deal with this.
100%. System. The last game we're going to talk about was on ESPN Plus, perhaps more easily accessible. St. Mary's at Arizona on Saturday. Great contrast of styles. And I think, at least for me, that's where the intrigue of this game comes in. Because that's always the question with St. Mary's is, can they slow a fast-paced team down and make them play that methodical St. Mary's style? The question with Arizona, what happens if they can't get out and run the way Tommy Lloyd teams like to do? There are personnel questions as well. Arizona may end up starting 3 newcomers, all the different things. But that contrast of styles, at least for me, is the main thing I'm looking for. What are you hoping to see from this game?
Yeah, this is the perfect exhibition game. This is exactly who St. Mary's should be playing, and this is exactly who Arizona should be playing in a game that doesn't count. Because you absolutely nailed it. Arizona is going to have to be a fast-paced team this year because they're so new and they have so much youth where the half court's going to be an issue at times. And St. Mary's, they're putting a lot of new pieces into the system that is always going to be predicated off of offensive rebounding and size and controlling tempo. What's going to happen when they play a team that's, double or 3 times more athletic than they are? So we're going to learn a ton about both teams. They're going to be pushed. They're going to be tested. It might be ugly basketball, but both teams will be better off for it. And honestly, I don't really think I'll take that much away from the result. I will be much more interested to see which guys for Arizona step up, which ones can play in the half court. And then for St. Mary's, is Mikey Lewis going to blossom into the next star that Randy Bennett has under his belt? And, who else fits in that backcourt around him after losing their entire backcourt?
Yeah, Mikey Lewis can bring some of the individual offense that can make St. Mary's really go and elevate that ceiling, similar to kind of what we've talked about with San Diego State. Arizona, Jaden Bradley is going to have the ball in his hands. This is his first time he's really going to do that. How does that look against a defense like St. Mary's? They're relying on a lot of freshmen. Can they handle this, or do they look a little bit overwhelmed, kind of like Auburn did? Some stuff to take away, but yeah, great exhibition for both, as you mentioned. This is one that's actually going to test your team, learn something other than just tinkering with lineups. I think we're very excited to see how that game goes. We're going to pick these. We'll go back to the top. Cincinnati or Michigan. I hope you're not picking Wes Miller.
No, I'm going.
Yeah, I think Michigan's got too much talent even if they're tinkering with things. Iowa State and Creighton.
I'm going to take. I know I was just saying they have no backcourt, but I'm going to take Iowa State because Creighton no Owen Freeman, and I think that Iowa State will ramp up the pressure.
I'm going to take Iowa State as well. One thing with Creighton that I had not talked about is that McDermott is nearing the end of his career. Right, you bring Alan Huss over from High Point to be the coach in waiting. That is a sign that you are winding things down, right? How involved are you? Maybe this is a chance to try, have Huss kind of try his hand. I don't know. Maybe nothing, maybe something. But I'm curious to see how he approaches this with Creighton. I think Cyclones are the more talented team too, so I'm gonna go with Iowa State. UCLA, San Diego State.
Yeah, I'm going UCLA. I think that they're way more talented offensively while being able to match SDSU on defense.
I love San Diego State as a program. I am down on this team. I think they're good. I don't think they have a chance to really be great. Unless we see an offensive guy step up, which I don't know if it's going to happen. I think Donovan Dent puts on a show. He wants to. First game for UCLA. I'm going to go Bruins as well. BYU or Nebraska?
I feel like somebody has to take an underdog. So I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to say Nebraska out schemes BYU in the preseason and give me the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'm going to go BYU just for the talent advantage and also because you and I can't pick the same one in every single one of these, or else there's no fun in that. But
caveat, no rink mask. I forfeit.
Yeah, it'll be a no decision. We'll call it a no decision. Yeah. Yes. But I think a Nebraska win is in the cards again if BYU and Kevin Young are just tinkering. We'll find that out. St. Mary's in Arizona.
I'm going to take St. Mary's. I think that if Randy Bennett has any interest in winning this, he's going to slow down Arizona, and those freshmen are going to be very confused. So give me the Gales.
I'm going Arizona. I think Jaden Bradley has a chance to be first-team All-Big 12 guy this year. I'm very high on him, have been for a while, and I just don't think he's had the opportunity that this season presents itself. And Arizona has a lot of freshmen that they're going to play. But those freshmen are very talented. Those freshmen are very good. I think, again, just they kind of overwhelm St. Mary's, and I'm expecting a good season for Mikey Lewis this season. But kind of as we talked about with Tahad Pettiford, when you are the guy and it's exhibition season, shooting percentages drop. And it wouldn't surprise me if he is less efficient today than he will be at the end of November, let's say.
Yeah. And then the last thing is a constant reminder, these games don't mean anything. Oklahoma State and Auburn will not be playing for the national championship. Lots to learn, lots to understand, but nothing to fully
unless your team wins. Then you can take away whatever you want from it, and you're going to win every single game this season. That's the joy of being a fan in October in college basketball. We'll be back on Monday breaking down all of these games and more that happens from the weekend, and also looking ahead to the games that are coming up next week because we're rolling along in exhibition season. Real thing. It's fast approaching on November 3rd. We're here to take you up to then and all through the season as well. Here, Weekend Under Review. We'll talk to you next time.